1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Uno, dos, tres, uno, dos, tres, uno, dos, tres, uno, dos, tres.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Empieza Juan.
Ya en segundos estaremos al aire para televisión.
We will soon be on air for the entire country and for the world.
Perfecto. Muchas gracias.
20 segundos. Institucional, muy buenos días, bien.
Good morning.
Televidentes de Canal Institucional,
For
muy
those
buenos
who are
días,
viewing us
bienvenidos
on
a
Canal
esta sexta
Institucional, welcome
plataforma
to this,
internacional de
the
reducción
sixth
del riesgo
regional
de la
platform
hermosa
for
ciudad de
disaster
Cartagena.
risk
Me acompaña
reduction from the beautiful city of
Carolina
Cartagena.
Giraldo,
I'm here with
encuentro
Carolina
internacional importante
Giraldo.
para nuestro país.
This is a very
Juan Carlos,
important
muy buenos días,
international event for our
buenos días a
country.
todos
Good
los
morning, Juan
televidentes de
Carlos,
Canal
to all those who are
Institucional y de
viewing
vía
us at
streaming
the
que nos
Canal
siguen desde
Institucional,
todo el
following
mundo.
us via
Efectivamente,
streaming
esta plataforma regional de reducción
throughout
del
the entire
riesgo de
world.
desastres en las
This
Américas es el evento más importante
disaster
en
risk
la
reduction
región
is the
en
most
materia
important
de
event in our
reducción del
region with
riesgo de
regard
desastres.
to
En
disaster
esta
risk
oportunidad,
reduction.
Colombia es
On
el
this
país
opportunity,
anfitrión,
Colombia,
lindo
and
escenario,
what
la
more
bella
than this
Cartagena de
beautiful
Indias, para
setting,
llevarles
the city
a
of
todos
Cartagena,
ustedes
Indias,
toda la
to
información sobre la
share
importancia
with
de
you
la
all the
prevención del riesgo y
information
por
with
qué es
regard to the
importante
importance of
estar
preventing
preparados.
risk and why we
Claro que
must be
sí, son
prepared.
1000 invitados
Of course,
internacionales
there are
que se hacen
1,000
presentes
international guests
aquí en la ciudad
present
de
here
Cartagena
in
de
the city
Indias.
of Cartagena.
Intercambio, conceptos,
The idea is to
cómo
exchange
prevenir,
concepts
cómo
and notions on
responder ante
how
los
to
desastres
prevent and
naturales,
answer
y
to
Colombia es uno de los países
natural
líderes en la
disasters. And
región
Colombia is a leader in
en
the region
este asunto.
with
Por eso
regard
se
to
hace
this
aquí en
subject. That's
Colombia.
why Convention Center of Cartagena, the President of the Republic of Colombia is present, and Nobel Peace Laureate Juan Manuel Santos. This event is sponsored by the government of Colombia as the host country for disaster risk reduction and the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. This platform signifies an opportunity for governments, the private sector, civil society, and other stakeholders in the Americas to exchange experiences with regard to the implementation of the Regional Action Plan that was agreed upon in March 2017 in Montreal, Canada, as a reference for the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction
Saludamos a esta hora aquí en el Centro de
2015-2030
Convenciones a los
in
más
the
de 1000
Americas. We'd now
delegados
like
que
to
nos
greet the
acompañan
more
de
than
países
1,000
como
delegates joining us from
Antigua
countries
y
such as
Barbuda,
Antigua and Barbuda,
Dominica, Estados Unidos,
the United States,
El Salvador,
El Salvador,
Granada,
Granada,
Guatemala, Guyana,
Haiti,
Honduras, Jamaica,
Mexico,
Nicaragua,
Panama,
Paraguay,
Paraguay,
Perú,
Peru,
República
Dominican
Dominicana,
Republic,
San Cristóbal y Nieves,
St.
San
Kitts and
Vicente y
Nevis,
Granadinas,
St. Vincent and the
Santa
Grenadines,
Lucía,
St. Lucia,
Sudáfrica,
South Africa,
Surinam,
Suriname,
Trinidad y Tobago,
Trinidad and
Uruguay,
Tobago, Uruguay,
Venezuela,
Venezuela,
Argentina,
Argentina,
Bolivia,
Bolivia,
Brasil,
Brazil,
Chile,
Chile,
Colombia,
Colombia,
Costa Rica,
Costa Rica,
Cuba,
Cuba,
Ecuador,
Ecuador,
Bahamas,
Bahamas,
Belice,
Belize,
Barbados,
Barbados,
Canadá
Canada,
y territorios de ultramar. Para todos ustedes
and
un gran
the
aplauso.
ultra
Bienvenidos a
sea
Colombia.
territories. An applause and welcome to Colombia.
Desastres Caprade,
Reaction
el Centro
to
de
Disasters
Coordinación para la
Caprade,
Prevención de los
the
Desastres
Coordination Centers
Naturales
for
en América Central,
Risk
CEPREDENAC, Agencia de
Reduction,
Gestión de
CEPRENAC,
Emergencias de
the
Desastres del Caribe,
Caribbean
la Agencia
Response
Suiza para el
Agency,
Desarrollo y la
CEPREMA, the
Cooperación,
Swiss
COSUDE,
Agency for Cooperation, COSUDE, the
CELA, OEA,
ECLAC,
UNASUR, REMAGIR,
UNASUR,
los
REMAGIR,
representantes del Sistema de
representatives
Naciones
from
Unidas
the
y donantes.
UN system and
Para dar
donors.
inicio, los
To
invitamos
begin,
a
we'd
ponerse
like
de
to
pie para
invite
entonar
you
el
to
himno de la
stand
República de
to
Colombia
sing the
con la
national anthem of
interpretación a
Colombia.
cargo del Quinteto de Cuerdas
We have
San
with
Felipe
us
Ensamble de
a
la
string
Institución
quintet from the
Universitaria de
institution,
Bellas
the
Artes.
Oh, gloria inmarcesible, oh, júbilo inmortal, en surcos de dolores, el bien germina allá, el bien germina allá. Oh, gloria inmarcesible, oh, júbilo inmortal, en surcos de dolores, el bien germina allá. Cesó la horrible noche, la libertad sublime derrama las auroras de su invencible luz, la humanidad entera que entre cadenas gime, comprende las palabras del que murió en la cruz. Oh, gloria inmarcesible, oh, júbilo inmortal, en surcos de dolores, el bien germina allá, el bien germina allá. Oh, gloria inmarcesible, oh, júbilo inmortal, en surcos de dolores, el bien germina allá.
Los invitamos a tomar sus
We'd now
lugares.
like to
Les contamos
ask
que
you to
durante
have a
3
seat
días tendremos
and
un
tell you
espacio
that for the next
dinámico de
3 days we're
carácter
going to have
multisectorial
a
para el
dynamic
intercambio,
multi-sectoral opportunity to
reconocimiento,
exchange
la discusión y la formulación de
information,
políticas a nivel
discuss and
regional,
debate
nacional y
regional,
local para la gestión del
national and
riesgo de
local
desastres.
policies for
A continuación,
disaster
el video de
risk
presentación
reduction.
de la
We'd
sexta
now like to share
plataforma
with you the
regional
video
para la reducción
from
del
the
riesgo
6th
de
regional
desastres en
platform
las
for
Américas,
disaster
en
risk
Colombia.
reduction in the Americas in Colombia.
Esta es Colombia, nuestra patria, un territorio hermoso e increíblemente diverso. Pero esta privilegiada condición geográfica ha determinado que seamos uno de los 5 países más vulnerables del planeta. El impacto del cambio climático es una realidad ineludible. Año tras año, vivimos en medio de condiciones extremas. Enfrentamos temporadas de lluvias que causan deslizamientos, inundaciones y vendavales. También resistimos durante meses altas temperaturas sin precipitación alguna, que ocasionan escasez de agua e incendios forestales. La costa Caribe suele verse impactada por la temporada de huracanes después de la primera mitad del año. También somos un país con una importante actividad volcánica y sísmica. Todo esto nos obliga a estar siempre alerta ante diversos fenómenos amenazantes. Al norte de Colombia, en la región de La Guajira, la escasez de agua ha llegado al límite. Si en esta zona la sequía es quien castiga a sus habitantes, en otras regiones la lluvia causa innumerables estragos. Este es el caso del municipio de Salgar, a 100 kilómetros de Medellín, que vivió una de las peores avalanchas por la crecida intempestiva de la quebrada La Liboriana. Cerca de 100 personas perdieron la vida una madrugada de mayo de 2015. Muchas de ellas dormían en sus casas cuando la muerte los sorprendió. Así la naturaleza resulta ser una incontenible e implacable amenaza. Los colombianos somos aguerridos y luchadores. Desde 2011, como una necesidad de país, se crea la Unidad Nacional para la Gestión del Riesgo de Desastres, entidad dedicada exclusivamente a conocer y reducir el riesgo, así como manejar los desastres de origen natural o antrópicos no intencionales. Gracias a la gestión del riesgo, los habitantes de Salgar fueron atendidos de manera oportuna y en poco tiempo se realizó la reconstrucción de la zona afectada. En época de sequía, también se ha probado la capacidad de reacción y ejecución de la entidad, gracias a las labores que se realizaron para enfrentar la escasez total de agua. La preparación y experiencia adquirida a nivel nacional ha permitido a la unidad brindar ayuda a países hermanos afectados por la misma fuerza de la naturaleza. Todo lo que hemos aprendido y realizado durante estos años ha sido solamente el comienzo de esta historia. Aún hay mucho camino por recorrer para hacer que la gestión de riesgo sea un compromiso de todos los colombianos. Nuestro gran propósito es construir día tras día una Colombia menos vulnerable, con comunidades más resilientes. Unidad Nacional para la Gestión del Riesgo de Desastres.
El pasado 3 de junio de 2018, el volcán de fuego en Guatemala hizo erupción dejando hasta
The Fuego
el momento
volcano
más de
in
100
Guatemala
personas
has
muertas
left more than
y
100
197 desaparecidas.
fatalities,
En este
as
momento
well as
pedimos
missing
un minuto de
persons.
silencio
We'd like to now request a minute of silence for all the victims of this tragedy. We are with you from a distance, and we would like to express our solidarity.
toda nuestra solidaridad con los hermanos de Guatemala. Ahora invitamos a la señora Mami Misuturi, representante especial del
Mami
Secretario General
Misuturi,
para la Reducción del
the
Riesgo
special
de
representative
Desastres de la
from
Oficina de
the
las
Secretary
Naciones Unidas
General
para la
for
Reducción del
the
Riesgo
UN
de
Office for Disaster Risk
Bienvenida,
Reduction.
señora.
Welcome, Ms. Misuturi.
Su Excelencia, Dr. Juan Manuel.
Your
Santos
Excellency,
Calderón,
Dr.
Presidente de
Juan
la
Manuel
República de
Santos
Colombia,
Calderón,
Dr.
President of the
Carlos
Republic
Iván
of
Márquez
Colombia,
Pérez, Director
Dr.
General
Carlos
de la
Iván
Unidad
Márquez
Nacional
Pérez,
para la
Director
Gestión del Riesgo
for
de
the
Desastres de la República
National
de
Disaster
Colombia.
Risk
Señor
Reduction
Martín
Unit in Colombia,
Santiago,
Mr.
coordinador,
Martín Santiago,
Presidente de las Naciones
Coordinator,
Unidas en
Resident
Colombia.
Coordinator of the UN in
Señor
Colombia,
Carlos Kaiser,
Mr.
Director
Carlos
Ejecutivo
Kaiser,
de
Executive
ONG
Director
Inclusiva y
of
representante
NGO
de la
Inclusiva and
Red de
representative
Gestión Inclusiva
of the
del Riesgo de
Inclusive
Desastres y
Network
Discapacidad
for
en América Latina
Disaster Risk Reduction
y
and
el
Disabilities
Caribe.
in Latin America and the
Representantes de los
Caribbean,
Estados miembros,
representatives from the member
organizaciones
states,
intergubernamentales
intergovernmental
y demás
organizations,
grupos
and
interesados.
other groups
Distinguidos
of
delegados,
interest,
damas y
distinguished delegates,
caballeros.
ladies and
Es un
gentlemen.
gran honor para
It is
mí
a great honor
estar
for me
presente
to be
el día de
present
hoy y
today
dirigirme al
and
excelentísimo
speak to
presidente y
the
a todos
President
ustedes
and all
en
of
esta
you
espléndida ceremonia
in this marvelous
inaugural de la
inaugural
sexta
ceremony
plataforma
of
regional
the 6th Regional
para la reducción
Platform
del
for
riesgo de
Disaster Risk
desastres en las
Reduction
Américas.
in the Americas.
Tanto las plataformas regionales
Both
como la
regional
plataforma
platforms
global
as well as the
desempeñan
global
una
platform
función fundamental
play a
en la
fundamental
promoción de
role
la
in
aplicación
the
del marco
promotion
de
and
Sendai,
application
al
of the
ofrecer
Sendai framework
espacios
by
destacados
offering
para
privileged
evaluar
spaces
los
for
avances
assessing
logrados
progress
y nuestro aprendizaje
made
mutuo.
and learning from each other.
Esta conferencia
This
se está
conference
llevando a cabo en
takes
un momento
place
muy difícil
at a
para
difficult
millones
moment
de
in
personas
time
en
for
toda la
millions of
región,
people
cuyas
throughout
vidas
the entire
continúan
region whose
resultando
lives
afectadas por una
continue to
serie
be
de eventos
affected by
catastróficos.
catastrophic
En
events.
especial,
In
tengo presente
particular,
en mis pensamientos al
my
pueblo
thoughts
de
are with the
Guatemala,
people of
que
Guatemala,
apenas está
who
empezando a
are
resignarse
still
por la
coming to
pérdida
terms
posible
with
de
the loss
cientos de
of
vidas
possibly
debido a
hundreds
la
of
erupción
lives
del volcán de fuego
due
a
to
principio
the
de
Fuego
este mes.
volcanic
El
eruption
número de
earlier this
víctimas
month.
y el hecho de
The
que
death
más de
toll and the
1 millón
fact
de
that the
personas hayan
The lives of over 1 million
afectadas
people have been affected
es una razón más por la
is
que
a
esta
further
región
demonstration
se ha
of why this
comprometido
region
a
is
aplicar
so
el
committed
marco de
to
Sendai
implementing the
para la
Sendai
reducción
framework
del
for
riesgo de
disaster risk
desastres
reduction
2015 a
2015
2030.
to 2030.
El aspecto fundamental para salvar vidas en
A
posibles zonas
key
de
aspect to
desastres
saving lives in
radica en
potential
la
disaster
elección de
zones lies in
estrategias
the
nacionales y
execution of
locales
national and local
para la
strategies
reducción
for
del
disaster
riesgo de
risk
desastres,
reduction.
y esto debe
And this
incluir
must include
protocolos que se practiquen y se
well
comprendan
rehearsed
muy bien
and well
para así
understood
emitir
protocols
alertas tempranas
for
y
issuing early
velar
warnings and
porque se
ensuring
tomen medidas con base
that they are
en
acted on.
estas. También requiere
It
un
also
fuerte
requires
liderazgo
strong
político
political
a nivel
leadership
nacional
at
y
both the
local.
national and
El año
local
pasado,
level.
la región
Last year,
experimentó
the region
uno de los
had one of
índices
the
más
highest
altos
rates
de desplazamiento de la
of
población
population
en el mundo,
displacement in the
debido
world,
en gran medida a una temporada de
largely as a
huracanes
result
en el
of a
Atlántico sin
record-breaking
precedentes.
Atlantic
Hubo
hurricane season.
1.7 millones de personas
1.7 million
desplazadas
people were
en los
displaced
Estados Unidos
in
y otra
Cuba
cifra
and the United
similar
States.
en Cuba,
And there were
mientras
similar
que en la isla
figures
caribeña
in
de
Cuba,
Barbuda
while in
fue
Barbuda,
necesario evacuar a toda su
evacuations
población.
were,
En Dominica,
their entire
muchas
population needed to be
personas perdieron sus
evacuated.
hogares.
In
Las
Dominica, many were left
investigaciones más
homeless.
recientes sobre el
Latest
aumento de la
research on the
mortalidad
rise in
en
mortality in Puerto Rico
después del
after the
paso
passage
del
of
huracán María
Hurricane Maria
revelan que
demonstrate
las trágicas consecuencias
the
a
tragic
largo plazo
long-term
que generan
consequences
estos
of such
eventos
events
cuando las redes viales quedan
when
severamente
transport
dañadas
links
y se interrumpen
are
drásticamente
severely
los servicios
disrupted,
públicos,
as well as
en
public
especial en el
utilities,
caso de
especially
aquellas personas que
for
dependen
those
de estos para
reliant
recibir
on
con regularidad
regular treatment
tratamiento y
and
atención
medical
médica.
care.
Las pérdidas económicas y las consecuencias a
The
largo
economic
plazo
losses and
que estos
long-term
eventos
consequences
tienen al
of such
desarrollo
events on
sostenible
sustainable
son las
development
razones por las
are
que
the
debemos
reason why we must
perseverar
persevere in our efforts to reduce the negative impact of disasters. Our approach must be focused on risk management rather than disaster management. This means that we must discuss the matter of tackle poverty, adapt to climate change, and better manage the scale and quality of construction in our cities and towns, preserve ecosystems that protect us, and strengthen institutional capacity. Above all, the Sendai Framework urges us to reduce disaster risk by ensuring that we adopt an inclusive approach for the whole of society to disaster risk management. We need to hear the voices of those who suffer disproportionately in such events. This is why we must consult and ensure the engagement of people living with disabilities, older persons, women, children, and indigenous groups. As we implement the target E of the Sendai Framework, which seeks to a substantial increase in the number of countries with national and local strategies for disaster risk reduction by 2020. This will be a significant area of discussion here at the regional platform. Our host country, Colombia, stands out for its many successes in disaster risk reduction. Under the robust leadership of President Santos, Colombia was the first country to align its national development plan with the Sustainable Development Goals and the Sendai Framework, explicitly integrating disaster risk reduction and action on climate change as conditions for resilient growth. This is an impressive compliance achieved that will no doubt be remembered as one of the many legacies left by President Santos. The assessment that has an impact on the Atlantic hurricane season in the year 2017, which set new records for the damage and loss in the Caribbean and the United States, is high on our agenda.
Last year, the region experienced a record number of more than 300 million, including, or according to the disasters, which includes the earthquakes in Mexico and the floods that occurred in Canada. The strengthening of the Making Cities Resilient campaign in the Americas will ensure participate in the campaign, and this is an excellent foundation for building resilience to disasters at the local level in one of the most heavily urbanized regions in the world. This regional platform is also notable for the fact that it is the first one to take place since the launching of the Sendai Framework Monitor in March of this year. Proper data collection is an essential aspect to monitor progress in achieving the 7 targets of the Sendai Framework. I hope that this regional platform will provide a further boost to the number of countries through the Sendai framework, monitor the reporting of their disaster losses. I expect that this will be the case, given that this is the first regional platform where we have such a strong presence of representatives from national statistics offices. I also extend a warm welcome to the congressmen joining us over these 3 days. They are joining forces to recommend a protocol, a parliamentary protocol for legislation on disaster risk reduction. This, I'm sure, will enhance the reputation of the Americas to establish legislative frameworks on disaster risk reduction. I am sure that others will soon join, as well as Argentina, Chile, Colombia, Costa Rica, Ecuador, Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, Paraguay, and Peru, as well as other countries, will align their approaches to disaster risk management with the Sendai framework targets and priorities. On behalf of the UN Secretary General, who has made prevention one of the most important agendas during this tenure, and my UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, I would like to close by expressing once more, my appreciation to the government of Colombia for hosting this important event, as well as to our supporters, our close supporters, the European Union, the Office of the U.S. Foreign Disaster Assistance, the Development Bank of Latin America, the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, the Government of Argentina, and the UPS Foundation. During the last regional platform, you adopted a regional plan of action for implementing the Sendai framework in the Americas, and I am very much looking forward to hearing the progress you have made since that meeting last year in Montreal. The outcomes of this regional platform will provide important input to the next global platform for disaster risk reduction, which will be hosted in May 2019, and the host will be Switzerland. This is my first time attending the regional platform in the Americas, and I am looking forward to attending lively sessions and meeting as many people as possible with whom we are moving forward towards the disaster risk reduction challenge. Thank you very much for your attention.
Muchas gracias a la señora
Thank you to Ms. Mitsutori for her
Queremos
intervention.
invitar
We
ahora al señor Carlos
want to
Kaiser,
invite
director ejecutivo de
Carlos
ONG
Kaiser, who
Inclusiva
is the director
y
of
representante de la
Inclusiva
Red de
Foundation
Gestión
and
Inclusiva del
representative
Riesgo de
of the
Desastres y
Inclusiva
Discapacidad
Networks and
de América
Disabilities
Latina
in
y el
Latin
Caribe.
America and the Caribbean. You're welcome.
Muchas gracias. Su Excelencia, el presidente de
Your
la República
Excellency,
de
the President
Colombia,
of Colombia,
Juan Manuel Santos.
Juan Manuel Santos,
Señora
Ms. Mami Mitsutori,
Representante especial del
Special
Secretario
Representative
General de Naciones
on
Unidas para la
Disaster
Reducción
Risk
del Riesgo de
Reduction
Desastres,
of the Secretary General of the
Dr.
United
Carlos
Nations,
Iván
Dr.
Márquez,
Carlos
Director
Iván
de la Unidad de
Márquez,
Gestión de Riesgo
Director
de
of the
Desastres de
National
Colombia.
Unit for Disaster Risk Reduction of Colombia,
Distinguidos ministros y directores
distinguished
del Gobierno
ministers
de la
and
República de
directors of the
Colombia,
Government of the Republic of
distinguidos
Colombia,
integrantes de las
distinguished
delegaciones de los
members
países
of the
miembros de las
delegations of
Naciones
member
Unidas,
countries of the United
entidades
Nations,
miembros del sistema de
member
Naciones
entities of the
Unidas,
United Nations system,
representantes de las
representatives of
organizaciones de la
civil
sociedad civil,
society organizations, disaster risk management networks. It is a high honor to offer the following words. We live in a world that faces multiple and complex threats. Our region is the second most affected by disasters in the world. This situation requires coordinated responses. Fortunately, we are fraternal people with a common history. We have contributed with knowledge and initiatives to disaster risk management. But society is not complete if it excludes those to whom many
no nos consideran iguales,
considered
nos
different,
consideran distintos y muchas veces
and
no válidos,
sometimes not valid,
sin los mismos derechos.
but
Me
with the same
refiero
rights.
a
I mean
nosotros, las
us,
personas con
the people
discapacidad.
with
Al
disabilities.
igual que otros grupos
Like
vulnerados,
other vulnerable
enfrentamos
groups, we
prejuicios
face
a los que
prejudices
se les
to
suma el
which
efecto
we
negativo
add
de
the
las barreras
negative
del
effect
entorno,
of our
teniendo
environmental
de 2 a
barriers,
4 veces
having
más
2 to 4
posibilidades de
times
morir o
higher
resultar
chances of
lesionados
dying
en un evento desastroso.
or be injured in a disaster
Como
situation.
sociedad civilizada,
As a civilized
no podemos
society, we
permitir
cannot
que tal
allow
situación
such a
permanezca.
situation to remain.
No nos dejen morir.
Do not let us die.
Tenemos el marco de Sendai,
We
que
have
es
the Sendai framework, which is
y la
inclusive,
Declaración de
and the
Dhaka,
Declaration of
entre
Dhaka,
muchas otras medidas.
among many other measures.
Cambiemos el mundo
Let's
juntos.
change the world together.
No trabajen con
Do
proyectos
not
acerca
work
de
with
nosotros,
projects
pero
about
sin
us,
nosotros.
without
Crean
us.
en nuestras capacidades.
Believe in our capacities, given the fact that due to our life experience, we are experts in resilience. Holding hands,
Crearemos
we
una
will
región
create an
y un mundo inclusivo,
inclusive, safe, and resilient region and world. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, presidente.
Muchas gracias, señor Kaiser.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaiser. Within the framework of this event, we also launch a book called Colombia Less Vulnerable, and we will convey this to the countries of lessons learned during the 8 years of government handling and managing that occurred at a national and international level. This broad investigation really gathered all the risks of the region in 4 chapters, and 4 chapters together with photographs, which is conveyed towards our risk reduction policy, which makes us less vulnerable. We invite the General Director of the Inclusive Management of Disaster Risk and Disabilities of Latin America and the Caribbean to hand 1 copy of this book to our President, Dr. Juan Manuel Santos Calderón. Ladies and gentlemen, we pass the floor now to President of the Republic of Colombia, Dr. Juan Manuel Santos Calderón. Good morning to all of you, Mrs. And congratulations.
La selección de Japón ganó ayer en Francalid.
Selection of Japan won in a very, very strong defeat. Mr. Executive Director of Inclusiva and representative of the Latin America Management Network, Carlos Kaiser, also the representative of the Network for Inclusive Management of Disaster Risk and Disabilities, Carlos Marquez, are very appreciated delegates who are here with us and honor us with their visit. The Mayor of Cartagena, Yolanda Wong, distinguished exhibitors and panelists, friends from media. Let me begin by a domestic issue today that has to do with disasters, but not those that really are due to the nature, but men, and to call attention because today we are discussing very important things in our country, and that it has to do with the armed conflict and the war disasters which Colombia has suffered during more than 54 years, and that we were able to end that war through some agreements which are sacred, which is the work that the country led. And among those agreements, we have the implementation of the transitional justice, which is a special justice created by the international community through the Rome Treaty. and where there is a special tribune which will judge all those accountable for the most horrendous crimes in order to stop impunity within these peace agreements in order to have a very stable peace. Within those decisions that we have to take, one of the last ones, which is very important, is to give procedures to that special peace. And that discussion is right now in the Congress of the Republic in its last debate, and I want to give that law or act so that this special justice for peace can operate in a very diligent way, because we owe that to victims, but we also owe it to international communities who has given such support, and as well as the United Nations, to Colombia in order to achieve that peace that has to be, again, stable and durable. If due to reasons of trying to make a fight between political decisions and want to postpone that decision, I want to tell senators to please play in other scenarios when, with respect to their political views, because peace should be really the first priority. There is no excuse not to vote today. There is no excuse to make that decision. The fact of postponing that decision with the argument that the Constitutional Court has not given their approval to an statutory law regarding this topic is not a valid argument, because what we are regulating right now is not the statutory law, but an act that already has a constitutional endorsement. So from Cartagena, I want to again make a call to the Congress of the Republic so that they comply to the international community as well as the victims, and really to follow their word in order for us to keep on building that stable and durable peace. Delegates, thank you again for your visit. This is a very important topic. Sometimes natural disasters seem to be a calamity, which is really a way we can't work on it, but they're so powerful that sometimes it leaves us without reaction. Nevertheless, sometimes we can't avoid the fact of a volcano erupting. We are able to minimize the consequences of the disaster, but most importantly, we are able to save life, and that is the objective that we have today, our goal. Our countries have immense objectives and challenges here, taking into account that this region, specifically Colombia, is very vulnerable towards climate change with all the problems that this has. In this regional platform, we will be able to exchange experiences and enhance or improve among us, because Colombia has had very important learnings in the past years, and we want to share those with you. Let me tell you an anecdote. I took office on August 7 of 2010. But before taking office, before the Congress in Bogota, I came here to the Sierra Nevada of Santa Marta, which is located at the north part of the Colombia in the Caribbean region, and I went to ask for permission to the Mamos, who are the indigenous governors who have been in these territories for a lot of years, for long. We call them our big brothers, and we are called the minor brothers, and we went there to ask them for permission and to get to know their indigenous culture in order for me to take office. So I sat down with Mamos, and they told me, President, it is a very nice gesture of you to be here. It's the first time the president in our history comes here. So they handed me a command, a scepter came, and I have to return them back to them. And they told me, you will have very difficult times because Mother Nature is furious because it has been harmed. And Mother Nature will react, and you will be the one who has to face very difficult situations. That occurred on August 7, 2010. And during those days, we had the most difficult process in the history of our country, which was the phenomena of the Niña, the most severe Niña of the world. So that is why, since the first day of our government, we've always paid attention to this topic of natural disasters and the disaster risk reduction, not only due to politics, but due to destiny. We had to start during the first day with the worst Niña phenomenon of the history. On August 8, I was in a place close to where we are called La Mojana, also helping all the people who were harmed. And those floodings affected the country and required our reaction, but we didn't know how to react before those, so we created a series of institutions. For example, we created something called Colombia Humanitaria, Humanitarian Colombia, which was a short-term project to face crisis. And we had the private sector, governors, and the private sector helped, aided a lot our institutions at a governmental level as well. And we were able to assist immediate affected persons with severity, transparency, and Humanitarian Colombia
was able to implement more than 9,000 works throughout the territory with a significant investment of more than 5 trillion pesos. This was on the short term. We also wanted to create institutions and a system that would allow us to work on this growing problem. The Vice President Al Gore was here. We invited him and he gave a keynote presentation on how climate change, if nothing is done, would only worsen, and how the consequences would be every day more severe throughout the entire planet. I remember he gave me a lesson on why it rains more, why there is more flooding as a result of climate change. And this led us to think, all Colombians and the government, it made us think that we needed to create a system. So after Colombia Humanitaria was closed, it was of paramount importance to develop a long-term strategy to manage risk. We needed a better system to be able to deal with disasters and have a policy that would allow us to reduce the likelihood of a disaster. And one important step was to create a fund that we called the Adaptation Fund. This was also the result of a myriad of discussions. We brought international experts to teach us about experiences in other countries, what worked, what didn't. And we created these institutions. We created the Adaptation Fund in order to make a series of investments to mitigate the effects of climate change in several areas of certain cities or villages, so that when there is an increase in the level of the rivers, that the towns not flood. What we have today, the National Unit to Manage Disaster Risk, based on all of these best practices. And since then, this unit has led the way with great devotion and commitment. It has spearheaded the strategy that strengthens the country's capacities to be able to be aware of the risks, to reduce them, and to manage disasters. But we went beyond that. In the year 2012, a law was approved by the Congress of the Republic that allowed us to establish an entire system, a national system for managing the risk of disasters, as well as the needed public policy to deal with this matter. As of today, fortunately, we have a far better organization, and we have financing mechanisms, and we have planning instruments and tools. And something that is very important are the information systems to be able to implement disaster risk systems. For example, Colombia is a country that has many rivers. We are the one with the most rivers throughout the entire world. And of course, rivers have their wetlands that have been invaded by man, and therefore the river looks for a different course, a different way to flow. And when the level of water increases in a river, when there is swelling, it can cause a series of situations that can be mitigated if they are planned for in advance. Previously, we had no way to plan for the swelling of the river, and now we have how many established plans for the rivers in Colombia? How many do we have? More than 80. 80 gauges or measurement points that indicate when we need to be careful because the level is rising. And this has allowed us to avoid many disasters and reduce the number of affected persons. And this has become a world reference. We have taken confident steps forward to strive to have a less vulnerable Colombia. We have strengthened communities, and this is very important, creating awareness in communities, because if they react in time, and if they also commit to collaborate in this process, they too will benefit from it and be better prepared to manage risks and disasters. We have risk management systems at a regional level that are set up to be able to respond in a timely fashion. And everything is activated according to the specific needs in each situation. The national system to manage disaster risks has executed more than 5,500 projects to mitigate and reduce risk, with an investment that surpasses 12 trillion pesos. And this has been good business, very good business for the state of Colombia. Just for you to have an idea, for every peso investment in reducing risk, we have saved approximately 7 pesos in disaster management. And additionally, there are more than 10 million persons who have benefited that we have managed to ensure that they are not affected by the situation that occur and that we have had to face. I'd like to give you an example of this. Over the last 3 years that have been very similar weather conditions, we've been able to reduce the effect on people equivalent to 51%. We have been able to reduce the effect on housing 80%, and families 70%, the effect on families. The entire national territory has technical assistance available to guarantee an adequate territorial development. There are plans outlined in the National Risk Management System. In other words, we are making this be a cross-cutting policy at a municipal level, at a departmental level, and at a national level. And over these 8 years, significant progress has been made. And I'd like to thank Carlos Iván, because this summarizes the work that we've done in these 8 years. We already have a national plan for disaster risk management with a 10-year outlook, and it includes the reference point and guidelines from international guidelines, the Sendai framework and the OECD that we just recently became a member country of. And today we can state that The country is no doubt much more prepared to be able to answer to any emergency that it faces. We already have agile response protocols, and we have very good coordination systems. They have been proven. In fact, the UN classified our search and rescue teams in they are very well classified in the world and in the region, and this has allowed us to be much more effective when responding to emergencies. And this is something that we see every day, because every day we have emergencies, some smaller and others greater. In the year 2015, and this is something that you saw in the video that was played earlier, the municipality of Salgar, which is a municipality in the southeast, a very important department, that of Antioquia. It was affected by an avalanche that left hundreds of affected and missing persons. Similar tragedies occurred, for example, last year in Mocoa, which is the capital of a department in the south of the country, Putumayo, or Corinto, the municipality, another department in the south of Colombia, El Cauca. At the beginning of our term, an entire municipality disappeared, Gramalote. We had to rebuild it elsewhere. Disasters such as these that caused so much pain we were able to answer and support them in record time, I'd say, being able to support the affected communities so that they can be in a condition that is the same or better than before. And this point here, better than before, is a policy that we've strived to establish since day one, 8 years ago, when we dealt with the Niña phenomena. We told the people of Colombia, and especially those that were affected, let us do as the Chinese have recommended. Let's make of these crises an opportunity. Let's take advantage of this problem and let's turn it into something positive. And many of those that were affected by these disasters, I'd say the majority, ended up in better situations than those that they were in before, say having better housing. So we were able to take advantage of this situation and turn it into an opportunity. And this has been our approach, one that has brought with it good results and has proven itself to be sustainable over time. But work is not over. We must continue vigilant because problems continue, and in fact some worsen. And this is why we implemented the humanitarian logistics centers. These are strategically located throughout the country to coordinate our management of emergencies. We set up 111 early warning systems in 12 departments in order to make decisions and act in a timely fashion. We have learned a great deal that when you act on time, many funds can be saved as well as many lives. We've also strengthened institutions and communities with national drills. Many do not believe in the importance of drills, but they're very useful because when something happens, if we're prepared and know what needs to be done, the difference is considerable when compared to those who have not done this kind of exercises. We've been able to prove the effectiveness of these procedures and protocols for responding to emergencies, and it's also allowed us to improve coordination among the coordination mechanisms. On the other part, international cooperation has been a fundamental pillar behind strengthening and developing our system. Colombia has worked to strive to position itself as a pioneer country when it comes to risk reduction policies. We have strived to innovate and to test new paths forward because we're a very, very vulnerable country. So in this process, we have wanted to take the initiative and be at the vanguard and not lagging behind when it comes to managing risk in the region and the world. We actively participate in several multilateral mechanisms, and we implemented the International Strategic Plan for managing the risk of disasters. And this has not only allowed us to have more organized and effective management, but it also made it possible for Colombia to receive cooperation and offer support with strategic partners such as the European Union countries, Japan, Korea, China, the Arab Emirates, the United States, the UN, of course, the International Red Cross. We've received many significant donations worth more than 42 million pesos, 42 billion, and we've also worked on projects that have contributed to strengthening the system. And additionally, through cooperation agreements, we established a permanent relationship of joint learning in both ways by exchanging knowledge and developing tools with other countries in the region such as Ecuador, Peru, Mexico, and Argentina. Over these years, we have implemented 63 sessions to exchange experiences with more than 200 partners that have allowed us to learn a great deal, learning from the best, as well as share our experiences with others. And notice here how much we've improved. We went from being a country that receives aid and support to have the possibility of investing in and supporting other countries. Over these years, we have been able to send help to an aid to sister countries such as Chile, Ecuador, Haiti, Peru, Cuba, Mexico. And this solidarity binds us and unites us with these countries, and also demonstrates that planning and cooperation are the best way forward in order to be able to respond to these disasters. Colombia can be very proud of its national system for managing the risk of disasters that it has been developing over recent years. This is a system as a result of serious and dedicated work, and whose priority is always the well-being of individuals and of lives. The entities responsible for managing risk and disasters know each what their role is in the system, their responsibility, and carry it out in a timely and effective fashion. It is a system where both local and national authorities recognize and know of their responsibilities and act accordingly. And together with these entities, I cannot skip mentioning the work that has been done, because we always see them there, they're always present. There are no words to thank the firemen, the civil defense, the Red Cross, our soldiers and our police forces, and the solidarity of millions and millions of anonymous volunteers. And here I would like to especially recognize Dr. Carlos Ivan Marquez, who is the director and who has been leading this unit from the beginning and is in great part responsible for all of this progress made. We still have immense challenges ahead. The implementation of the National Plan for Managing the Risk of Disasters from 2015 to 2025, as well as the national policy and compliance with our commitments made internationally. As you mentioned, we promoted the SDGs when we have committed to their compliance. These goals became the UN agenda for 2030, and we have committed to setting specific goals for 2030, and we enacted as a law these objectives. We were the first country to do so, and this for us is very important, among other things, and not just because of the part of sustainability, but because we are a country with a wealth of biodiversity, and climate change is perhaps the worst enemy
frente a esta biodiversidad. Ahora mismo estamos pendientes de
that
una
threatens our biodiversity. We are currently paying close attention to a situation in that same department I mentioned earlier, Antioquia, a
hidráulica de generación de energía, Hidroituango,
energy-producing
de suma importancia para el
plant,
país.
Hidroituango, a dam of great importance for the country. There we have a clear framework to provide support to the company and the department and the municipalities. With the emergency response that was presented for the construction of the project, all of the necessary measures have been taken to protect those who dwell there in that area. And we are working hard to avoid a disaster. But this is an example of how protocols, when well applied, work. As soon as the warning was made, the entire procedure was enacted. The Unified Command Post, I gave instructions to two of the environment ministers and mine and energies, Dr. Carlos Ivan Marquez. I said, go and please set up the command post and activate the system. And the system was activated, and the system has been working. Thousands of people were evacuated in the area where the river flows, Cauca. Unfortunately, we have not had a single victim. Our priority is this, to save lives and protect the population, and we are not going to rest until this emergency be overcome. Dear friends, this event is an amazing opportunity to be able to exchange information and tools and ideas that allow us to every day be better when it comes to avoiding disasters or to answer to them in the best way possible. I would like to thank the UN and their Office for Disaster Risk Reduction for trusting and believing in Colombia to be the host for this event that brings together the experts when it comes to disaster risk reduction from each country. I would also like to thank the partners, those who have joined us in this process of implementation, and I would like to thank the government of Switzerland, who provided significant economic support to be able to host the sixth regional platform. And I would like to conclude by remembering our brothers from Guatemala that recently suffered the eruption of the Fuego volcano. Our solidarity is with them. We know that they have the strength needed to be able to overcome this tragedy. I spoke to President Morales, and I told Carlos Ivan Marquez to do what corresponds with all of those who are responsible for answering to this emergency, and we have always been more than available and present to be able to assist our brethren in Guatemala.
And working all together, definitely we will achieve even more, because if we work in a very joint way, we are able to respond in a better way towards the challenges that nature presents us. The climate change is a global issue, maybe the most complicated of them all, which the humanity has. Countries as Colombia are more vulnerable due to our wealth regarding natural resources, our biodiversity too. We are, in fact, the wealthier country by square meter throughout the world, and that is why it is a task of all of us in order to find measurements to mitigate the consequences of this phenomenon. In this task, we should work jointly, and we cannot be delaying our decisions. Some think that climate change does not exist. And I ask myself, but how would that be possible by denying such a topic? How can they say that climate change does not exist? We see it every day throughout the world, and we have to be creative. We have to think around strategies in order to improve continuously and to find the way of advancing. Also, of course, thinking in the economic development of our country without sacrificing our home, our common household, which is the world. We have an immense future responsibility towards the future, and we can't abandon that, not even for a second. I want to conclude by referring or making reference to another disaster, which is not produced by changes in temperature or weather in the Pacific or the Atlantic, produced by hurricanes, but these are hurricanes produced by man, by bad policies, by corruption. There is a hurricane of Category 5, which definitely sat down in Venezuela and remained there, and it is producing victims. And Colombia is the country which is suffering the most. More than 1 million Venezuelans have arrived to Colombia. We've received them with open arms and hearts because we believe that it is our responsibility and obligation, and we do it in a warm way. But that hurricane has to pass, hopefully fast. And there is another hurricane which hasn't reached Category 5. It is around Category 2, but it's growing, and it is called Nicaragua. I want also to call the attention of the Secretary General of the OAS and the Permanent Secretariat for them to intervene, for them to discuss, to please use the tools that they have in their hands to stop the growth of these hurricanes and stop the production of victims. It is an obligation of all of us to have respect towards human rights and liberties and freedom. It is something that should also join us, as well as the fight against climate change and the fight in order to mitigate the risk of that climate change. So I wish all of you all the successes in the future, and thank you again for your attendance today.
Bueno, palabras del presidente de la República, Juan Manuel Santos. Importante, Carolina, el recuento que hace el jefe de Estado de modelos para América Latina, a seguir por lo menos lo que pasó en Mocoa, lo que pasó recientemente en Hidroituango. Lo citó como ejemplos claves como la prevención de lo que se debe hacer en el momento en que ocurre un desastre natural, pero también de cómo prevenir y salvar vidas.
Recordemos que Colombia es uno de los pocos países en la región de las Américas que cuenta con una ley de gestión del riesgo. Gracias a esta ley es que el presidente y su equipo de trabajo pueden modelar y pueden tener esos esquemas de coordinación tanto para la prevención del riesgo, la reducción del riesgo, que es lo que nos cita hoy en Cartagena, como la atención de las emergencias, el manejo de los desastres. Así, despedimos entonces esta transmisión en directo por canal institucional, sin antes decirles que vía streaming podrán seguir toda la transmisión de lo que pasa aquí en el Centro de Convenciones Cartagena de Indias y lo que tendremos durante estos 3 días de transmisión, Juan Carlos.
Claro que sí, y mire, muy importante también, en las horas de la noche estaremos conectados para contarles de aquí hasta el viernes qué es lo que está pasando durante este foro internacional. Los participantes, ya les contamos, son 1000 personas que se encuentran presentes para hablar de esto, de la prevención de desastres, de la lucha contra el cambio climático. Por eso, no se muevan, se quedan en canal institucional y aquí encontrarán la información respecto a la unidad de gestión del riesgo.